It occurs to me that our survival may depend upon our talking to one another.
Huge.
Welcome back to It's Lit Book Reviews. This is the podcast where we discuss all things books, and today we are talking about Hyperion by Dan Simmons, and that is the book from which that quote originates. So, let's just dive right in. Let's not play any games. We're very serious here. Hyperion
Wait,
came
who are
out,
we?
and I already said that. Oh, I'm
Oh,
Sauron, and with me as always is freaking Gandalf, dude. I mean, you shall not pass. You know what I'm saying?
am I the gray or the white?
You're the gray because you shall not
Oh,
pass. You're that one. But dude, you're standing in front of the Balrog doing one of the most epic
so
things in the
I'm
whole
close to
story.
being the white.
Yeah,
I
you're
mean, I
about to
have some
become the white.
tribulations, but okay.
Yeah, this podcast is probably going to be the tribulation for both us and anyone listening. So let's all get on board and talk about Hyperion by Dan Simmons. Came out in 1989. It's about 500 pages long. Got 277,000 ratings on the old Goodreads with a 4.27 out of 5 stars.
That's a lot.
We've been wanting to read this one for a while. This is, to my understanding, considered a pretty foundational or at least very popular sci-fi
Yeah.
novel and series. So I've had this one sitting on the shelf for a while. I mean, this whole time just thought it was Sauron's backstory because it looks like him.
Yeah.
But as we discuss here, we will learn that it is not about Sauron, in fact. But on the world called Hyperion, beyond the law of the hegemony of man, there waits the creature called the Shrike. There are those who worship it, there are those who fear it, and there are those who have vowed to destroy it. In the Valley of the Time Tombs, where huge brooding structures move backward through time, the Shrike waits for them all. On the eve of Armageddon, with the entire galaxy at war, 7 pilgrims set forth on a final voyage to Hyperion, seeking the answers to the unsolved riddles of their lives. Each carries a desperate hope and a terrible secret, and one may hold the fate of humanity in his hands. So let's get into it. We're going to start as we always do with a general discussion, non-spoiler discussion, and kind of rate the book itself. And then later we're going to, break the book back down, talk about spoilers, so on and so forth. What'd you rate it, brother? How'd you feel about this book?
This was my. We kind of talked about it, I guess. Like our rating system's so flawed. So
Mm,
I ended up giving this a 3 on Goodreads. I want to say, let me look. I think it's 3.1. Maybe it was like my more specific rating.
low
3.1 out of
3.
5. Yeah. This book was entertaining, but I mean, it was just. I don't think Dan Simmons is like an author for me. I mean, this is my. It's been a minute, but I know we've talked about it a little bit. But just for the sake of this, I tried to read Carrie and Comfort, and I got like maybe 100 pages in, and then I was out. It was
Yeah,
just.
rare
It was
DNF for you. We don't do
That
that
was a
here a lot.
long time ago, though. So like, I don't think I would DNF it now, and maybe it does get a lot better. Especially based off of this book, because like you said too before we started recording, I do agree. I guess it is the first half is not as good as the second half. I don't think the second half. I don't know. It's. I don't think it was that much better. I think it was better, but I think it's still him doing the same thing. I will say, like, it's
Mm,
creative. I mean, there were so
definitely.
many things that I did not expect. So I think that's what also
Oh,
kept
yeah.
me interested. Was just like I had no idea where this was going, but like I'm sure you'll say, I mean, dude, this book was nothing like what I thought it was going to be. The plot
Definitely
like
not.
basically doesn't progress at all. It's all just going back and like learning about each individual character. And then the biggest blight on this entire book. I mean, can you guess what I'm about to say?
I mean, it's got to be the length of the chapters. I mean,
Yes,
this is a
dude, 6
500-page,
chapters.
6-chapter book.
6 chapters. That I mean, Dan, I feel like he was just trying to prove a point there for no reason
Yeah,
at all. Um,
yeah.
that was brutal. So, I mean, the
There were
first
cells
chapter
without
being
wind in them a
100
few
page.
times.
Oh, yeah. So, and you and I both, I mean, I guess would agree, stopping mid-chapter just feels wrong, right? Like I
Yeah,
hate
I
doing
hate
that.
it. Yeah.
So, that was a big L for me too, but I mean, it was still I liked it more than I liked Sirens of Titan. So I,
Yeah, and you
I
interestingly made a bit of a comparison to Vonnegut, when you were, I guess,
yeah,
halfway through this book maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, you can tell it's like a different era, but you can tell. I feel like, I mean, I don't know. I could just be guessing. I feel like he's probably influenced by Vonnegut in
Yeah, I could
some
see
way.
that
It's
for
like
sure. Yeah.
so I think it's definitely more of a. I mean, when Vonnegut was writing, it just feels like that was just that time period, just that
Yeah.
style of just not really. Not that he wasn't caring, but anyway, like it just, this definitely feels. I don't want to say it's more well thought out, but he just cares more about the prose, because the prose are solid, and they're solid to an extent to where it's like, all right, like I want to know what's happening. And honestly, I'm struggling so hard to figure out what is occurring, because there's so much description at a high level, and there's so many words that aren't real words that I don't know what they mean. And so I'm having, which, I mean, we talk about this a lot. We both like world building a lot. So with world building comes like, especially when you first start a book, you're not going to know. They're just going to start talking about societies and caste systems and, like, important groups, and there's these random names and you don't know what they are, and you just got to figure them out. But he didn't really focus on helping you figure those out. I would say honestly, until chapter 5, I really didn't have a great understanding of how the galaxy was even, like, who the
Yeah.
power players were, to be honest.
Yeah.
um but I mean, it's still definitely worth a read, just because it's so crazy. Like, it's just so unique, I guess is the word I would use. But this wasn't like when I've read Dune for the first time. I mean, that was mind
Yeah.
blowing. Like, that was just like a wow experience. It wasn't anything like, Wind and Truth, or not Wind and Truth, The Way of Kings, or something like that. So I don't know. I think a lot of it though has to do with, I literally judged this book by its cover. So, and that unfortunately, I think hurt me a little bit. But what did you think? I know we share some thoughts, but
Yeah, I would definitely agree in some ways. I did give it a 4. I'm trying to be better on my ratings too, but at the halfway point of the book, I felt pretty solidly that it would end up being a 3 star, but the latter half of the book really did it for me, and I feel like an important piece for me at least was I read the first half throughout a couple days of extreme stress at work, and the long chapters and not knowing where it was going, and I don't know, just not feeling like I was
you
getting a
took
whole
some
lot
liberties
from
in
it.
the beginning too that were brutal. I mean, on the first
Yeah.
page, you sent me a picture, and I'm like, yeah,
Yeah, and we will get to that here shortly for sure. But the second half really did it for me, man. I was really into it. Those last 3 chapters, like I was locked in. They definitely
yeah,
every chapter
they were
starts
the best
slow
three
for
stories.
sure. But yeah, the last 3 stories were the best. And for those of you who haven't read it, it's essentially structured in you get 6 flashbacks in each chapter, and those are the majority of the chapter. Um, and so you're kind of just learning about these pilgrims that are going on this pilgrimage on Hyperion. And then at the beginning and sometimes the very end of each chapter, you're getting a tiny bit of plot development, which could just be like, oh, the spaceship got closer to Hyperion. Like that would be
Yeah,
like all you get in the real time plot sometimes. So that was a struggle, especially at first. But again, the latter half of the book really turned it around for me. I was super immersed in those storylines, and just thought it was really creative. And one chapter in particular, like, had me on the verge of tears almost the entire time. And we'll talk more about that in spoilers, but one of the stories was just
yeah, that was the
crazy
best one by far.
heartbreaking. So yeah, I gave it 4 stars. Definitely agree with the chapter length complaint, but I also would agree that it was, even though I still enjoyed it, it was not at all what I expected. I mean, I'm sure you're gonna have it on screen, but for the sake of me, like this is the I mean, front and center is what looks to be Sauron, the Dark Lord. And so I was maybe expecting like more, I don't know, action or things of that
Yeah,
nature. So again, never judge a book by its cover, but we always do. I mean, who doesn't? That's why people pay people to make sick covers because people judge
yeah.
books by their covers. That's what you see first. So,
It's crazy how
um,
different my cover is.
yeah, you
So
have a
this
different
one
edition.
is mine. Which now, to read the second one, there's no additions that are similar to this.
No, there's none. I
None.
looked
They
into it.
all look like yours. So I did too, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I mean, nice.
Yeah, and you'll have to go ahead for those that are watching on video, you have to throw up the Polish edition of the cover. I mean, that I don't
Yeah.
know why European editions of covers are always so much cooler than the ones we get, but the one for this book is very cool. But Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I liked the sci-fi elements, like you said. Once we really started to understand it in the later parts of the book, I thought it was really cool. Some of it was, maybe a little hokey, but he explains it or builds it into the world so it like fits. But his prose, I guess, if you will, whatever that word means, definitely seems like elegant at times, but sometimes it feels a little overdone, like he's taking liberties.
Yeah.
Like for instance, and sometimes I enjoy it, but this isn't a spoiler. But I'm going to read the very first paragraph of the prologue. Now, when I read this, just this paragraph alone, I was like, "Oh man, this is about to be a like mind blowing, amazing book." Andrew didn't quite feel the same. We'll talk about our thoughts after I read it, but
The prologue
prologue.
definitely gives you a misconception of this book, though, of
Well,
like
yeah,
what it's
it
going to
does
be.
because it's not a 90-page flashback.
Yeah.
Um, So the first paragraph of Hyperion reads, "The hegemony consul sat on the balcony of his ebony spaceship and played Rachmaninoff's prelude in C sharp minor on an ancient but well-maintained Steinway, while great green saurian things surged and bellowed in the swamps below. A thunderstorm was brewing to the north. Bruised black clouds silhouetted a forest of giant gymnosperms like stratocumulus towered 9-kilometer high in a violent sky. Lightning rippled along the horizon. Closer to the ship, occasional vague reptilian shapes would blunder into the interdiction field, cry out, and then crash away through indigo mists. The consul concentrated on a difficult section of the prelude and ignored the approach of storm and nightfall." I read that paragraph, and more than I've ever felt while reading a book, I thought, bro, I would give anything for that to be where I lived. Just up in a spaceship above a stormy planet with like crazy stuff going out and indigo mists, bro. Surround me with indigo mists any time of day. I'm down. So yeah, I read that and thought I was in for a really good time, and I was, especially towards the end. But it definitely does not.
Bro, you were not having a good time that first half.
No, not at all. That's what I'm saying is I thought I was about to have a really good time, and I did later. But this prologue did not reflect at least the first half of the book. I mean, he definitely is descriptive like that throughout, but what I guess I loved in that paragraph throughout the book started to become a bit laborious. Um
Yeah.
so again though, I still gave it 4 stars. It's probably not a good sell to tell someone to get through the first 250 pages and then you'll really like it. But it also wasn't one where I mean, I do remember telling you that after I was about 100 pages in, I was like, "Dude, I don't know if this book passes the 100-page test." Um, and I
Yeah.
mean,
I mean, it
chapter
does,
2 starts on
unfortunately.
102. So, like, that's just 1 chapter. Like, the
Yeah, you're not
100-page test,
really.
you get 1 chapter.
And that
Um,
first chapter is wild. I mean, it takes you on a wild ride.
dude, I mean, I got done with that chapter and I was like, "What am I reading? Like, what did I
And then
what
chapter two
is
doesn't really
this?"
help you out much either.
No,
Which
it's
chapter
it's
two, I
it's
think, ends on 175 for me. So it's like,
yeah.
oh gosh.
Yeah, chapter
I
2
mean,
was
they're
was
interesting. It's not that they're not interesting. It's just like, it's just the liberties. It's just liberty. It's just
yeah,
him literally doing whatever he wants. Like it doesn't matter.
yeah.
Which I mean, in the end, I guess it kind of. But that's
And
the
it gives
thing.
you
It's
this
like
feeling
because we have
like
no answers. It's not like, oh man, this is well thought out, dude. Like you don't know. So if you're coming into this book thinking you're gonna have conclusions, you either are gonna finish this book and immediately buy the second book and read it, or you're not finishing this book. I feel like because unfortunately I
yeah.
finished it and now I do have to read the second one, even though in the grand scheme of things, like I mean, I would still, I think, enjoy the second one. It's not that bad to not even think about reading the second one because it definitely progresses and gets better. But it's almost kind of disappointingly so because it's like just for me, it's like just good enough to where it's annoying because it's like I am probably gonna have to read the second one. Like it's just
Yeah.
bare. Like it's like I wish it was just a little bit not as good because then I wouldn't even care. But unfortunately, I
Yeah.
do care enough to where it's like, all right, like okay,
Alright.
I do
We
want to
gotta
know what's
continue.
going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just
So
feels like it almost at times like you would finish a chapter and get out of the flashback and have just like a page left of the chapter and they'd be in the ship or something. You'd be like, "Oh
I wish.
yeah, like
Yeah.
this is about like a group of people that are going to do something." And I still don't know anything about what they're doing. I just
Yeah.
know a lot about this person's past now. It almost feels like
Which the second book
A bunch
can't
of
do
short
that, right?
stories were used as the backstory for the characters in this
Yeah.
book, but you don't see really what the characters do until a tiny, tiny little bit at the very end, which really isn't anything.
Well, that's why I'm like, there's no how can he keep the format going? That's why I don't get the
Surely he
format
doesn't, bro.
because
Surely not.
so,
Dude, I'm about to
but that's just
but
something that needs to be known, which I guess I should have read more into the back, which I usually don't like doing that in the first place because I don't want to really know anything. Because sometimes those blurbs will not they're not necessarily spoilers, but it's just things that I want to learn as I read anyway. But
Alright,
you
I can
need
tell
to
you
know
one
that
thing.
there's 6 long chapters and it's each an
Yeah.
individual story, and that's what this book is. It's not like a real plot moving forward.
So I just kinda skimmed through the very end, not reading anything but the end of the second book, and on page
You're so
475,
reckless,
chapter
dude.
44 starts. So it is
Wait,
different.
what? Say that
Like,
again?
on my page 475, it's the beginning of chapter 44.
I
So
mean, dude, it's
he
like a
goes
different
to a
man wrote that
normal
book.
yeah, he
Like,
goes
it's
to a
just
normal I guess, framing.
it almost feels like it was like a dare or something, you know? Because he could have made it
Yeah,
like 6 parts and then done individual chapters. So then it's still split
yeah.
up that way, but then it just it feels like he did it just because he's like, "I can. Because this is
Well,
my
that
book
and it
and I can
also
do
feels
it."
like
That's
he
what it
wants
feels
you to
like.
read it all at once. That's what it felt like to me. It felt
Yeah,
like I
but
need to get this whole story at once. You know what I
which
mean?
I get, but it's like, who can do that? Like, thank God
Yeah,
I at work was slow for me and I was able to. Because 'cause you're right,
yeah.
bro, if I had to stop multiple times, for the most part, I was able to actually read all the way through a chapter, but it's not because it's because I just got lucky. Like, if I was like you where work was actually busy for me, yeah, I mean, this would have been
Yeah.
even worse. So, I mean,
It was
I
just a
at
really
least was
bad
able to
storm for
retain
me.
each one.
Yeah.
Well, I can
Yeah.
only imagine, dude, if you have to break these chapters up as is, especially the first 2, I mean,
Yeah. It was a bit of a tragedy at first, I won't lie. Not I was not enjoying this book that much in the first 3
well,
chapters.
and I guess we haven't even really said it much. The guy on the front cover is barely in this book, and that's what's
Yeah.
tough because he's a cool fit.
Yeah.
Like, it's a cool when he is in it, it's like, all right, what's going on there? Like, it's just what you want to know the most
Yeah.
about,
Right.
and it's just, you know,
Not much of it. But again, you gave it a 3.1. I gave it 4. I feel like it would be a 3.9,
I would
4.0.
still
Like it's
say to
not
read it for
over
sure.
a 4.0, but yeah, I would still say read it just because it is so different. I mean, like you said, I feel
Yeah.
like you're gonna really enjoy it or you're just gonna never be able to get into it. But I wouldn't say give up after the first 100 pages because that means you're only done with
You at least
chapter
gotta get to
1.
chapter 3. Chapter 3 is the best chapter in the book, so that's what's unfortunate.
Uh
Chapter 1 and
y
2 are the
chapter
worst.
4. Chapter 4 is the
Uh,
best.
it's 4?
Yeah, it's 4 because I know which one you're talking about. It's 4.
Uh,
It goes priest, soldier, poet,
oh, poet,
scholar, detective,
L,
consul.
dude. No,
Yeah.
or wait,
Yeah, you
you gotta
just
get
said the
over
poets
poet,
was the
unfortunately.
best.
My
This
fault,
might be
dude.
the
My
worst.
fault, actually. Yeah, that's
Uh,
oh, man. I deleted him out of my mind, unfortunately,
yeah, I
so
don't blame you. So look, we like the book and we obviously, as we said, both recommend it, but definitely know you're in for a commitment. And if you're gonna get anything out of this book, you're gonna have to see it through. So just know that if you DNF it, like that's your choice, but the good stuff is in the latter half
unfortunately,
and
the very
especially the end. Um, so let us know if you disagree with that. If you've read this book, is there much more to say, non-spoiler
Mm.
for you?
I do want to know, like, if someone is for some reason watching our video on this and you've read the second one, is the second
Yeah.
one worth it? Like, I want to know, is there actual real payoff? Because this book was such a tease to where now I do want at least some slight payoff with knowing some things about certain characters. So I am curious if anyone's read it to the second one, that is, which is called The Rise of, or what is it? The
I
Fall of
think it's
Hyperion?
The Fall of Hyperion. Yeah,
Okay.
that's the second one. So we'll get into that at some point, but definitely let us know what you think if you've read that and if you think we should or should not continue. We probably will, but Um, if you haven't read it and you don't want things to be spoiled that occur in the book from this point on, we are discussing all spoilers. We're going to try to go through the book kind of in order and discuss each chapter. Um, so yeah, check out if you don't want anything spoiled. So to lay the groundwork, essentially, paragraph I read is the consul. He's kind of the main character, if there is one.
Mm.
And it starts with him essentially being invited to go on this pilgrimage on Hyperion to go to what's called the time tombs, and no one really fully understands what the time tombs are. They
I still
have
don't
a
understand really.
vague understanding that they are objects sent from the future going backwards in time. And there's different opinions on why they may have done that, and some people don't even think that's what's going on. But anyway, on the planet Hyperion, every now and then they will allow a pilgrimage of 7 people to go to the time tombs and request a wish from the Strike, which I felt like was a really underdeveloped plot point because you never hear of anyone getting granted a wish. Um, and we don't get that far in this book, so we don't know if it's going to happen for our characters
Yeah,
either.
or
But
if like, how did they figure this out? Like, you don't know anything about the background of you just know, oh, for some reason, these people are gonna get a wish. Like, did anyone
yeah,
else ever get it? I
well, only
mean, who
one.
are those
Though.
people if
Dude,
they
you find
did?
out in the beginning that all of them are know this going in. Only one pilgrim will get to make a wish, and all of them will die. And it's like, why would anyone agree to this?
Yeah.
Like, I've got a 1 in 7 chance of getting a wish, and either way, I'm gonna die. Like, what is this? So that kinda lays the groundwork in a really sloppy way, but we're gonna just follow the structure of the book. So, essentially, throughout the book, you are with this group of 7 pilgrims while they travel from space to Hyperion and then throughout Hyperion until essentially they get to the time tombs, and the book ends, like, right before they get to the time tombs. So, um some things happen plot-wise throughout, and if we remember them, we'll mention them. But most of this is going to be focused, as most of the book is, on 6 different tales from 6 of the 7 pilgrims. We don't get one of the 7, for reasons that we'll discuss when we get to it, I guess. But, yeah, we got 6 stories to tell. So, Andrew, I'm gonna let you take it from here. Start us off with
Oh,
the priest
thank
tale.
God, man. Yeah, I was really wanting to get the first one. Appreciate that, dude.
Go
So
ahead and
this
hit us
first
up with
one, dude,
ol'
I don't know what this is. This chapter is as soon it's when I immediately realized, okay, this book is nothing like what I thought it was going to be. Really quickly, I learned. Um, so essentially, Father Hoyt is the person who draws the number one to tell his first story, and
Yep.
essentially, he is gonna, for the most part,
Oh, and I should
recount.
say, dude, before sorry to interrupt you. I should
No,
say,
yeah,
so the
yeah.
quote that I started with, it has occurred to me that our lives might depend upon our talking to one another. That's why this story is structured the way it is. These pilgrims are going on this journey together, but they don't know each other.
Who
So
says
they
that?
agree. The one
Is
who
it
says
Bronny
that, no, it's either I'm pretty
or
sure
is
it's
it?
Martin Solanus, the poet,
The
actually.
poet?
I believe I could be wrong. It might have been Cassad, the soldier, but either way, they decide that, yeah, we need to know each other's story so we understand why we were chosen because they were all chosen. They didn't decide to do this. They were chosen and accepted the offer to go on this pilgrimage. So they're all telling their story so that they can have an understanding of why they are on this journey
And
together.
they all
So,
know too, something that is in the prequel or prologue, uh, that there
right.
is one spy.
Yeah, there's a spy amongst them. Yes. Which is a crazy
Um,
setup. It's like, "Hey, we're gonna invite 7 people, and we know for sure one of them's a spy." It's like, "Bro, just don't invite any of them and pick 7 other people," you know? But we can't do that, obviously. But, so anyway,
dude, it's
s
like those
give us the
movie
priest
reviews or
tale.
whatever, where it's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Just
a
destroying a movie within
huge,
its first 2 minutes.
yeah. So Father
Uh,
Hoyt is going to mainly recount the story of Father Paul Dury, who was his, I guess, mentor. And he's a Catholic missionary. So again, I mean, we're getting references back to old Earth. What is it,
mhm.
700 years future?
Yeah, I think it's
Or
supposed to be
I
like 8
could,
centuries in the future or something like that.
yeah. So anyway, he ends up. Long story short, I guess he kind of botched something to where he was trying to prove that Christianity existed outside of like Earth, maybe on some other planet, and so he gets kind of casted out, and he decides to go to Hyperion to study the Bikura, however you say that,
Yeah.
which is like a primitive group that
It's
he's
basically the
heard
Native
about.
Americans of,
Yeah,
in
which it
colonial
seems even
times of
less
Hyperion.
significant than that, because I think it's maybe 70 people who went on a voyage and crashed, and then they were said to be living still. The crazy part about
Yeah.
this is the whole like forest of trees that are a problem that are just
Lightning trees, yeah.
yeah, the Tesla trees or whatever they're
Yeah,
called.
yeah, Tesla trees, yeah.
So I guess they live behind this, and so no one. I guess a lot of people don't even really care, but something that you don't realize until later on, but like everything is so connected, like through technology and through basically, I want to say the internet, but with AI and whatnot, you don't realize until later on. So in this first story, it doesn't matter as much, or not that it doesn't matter. You're not as realizing it, but Hyperion's one of those few like worlds that is like not connected to like where you can just immediately, I guess, hook up to the net or whatever they call it. So anyway, they're kind of behind another. They're just very out there, and so the jury guy shows up, and I mean, it's not really in our notes here, but it's something that has to be talked about. And I don't even know if I'll have to bleep this or not. But essentially, he pulls up on this tribe of 70 people, and immediately he's like, okay, like
He
they're missing
immediately calls them
and that's literally what he says in the book. So we're
he
quoting
R
Dan.
words. Yeah, I'm quoting.
He
He
drops
uses the
an
R
R word.
word to
It's a
describe
hard
these people.
quote. And he
And you're
thinks
definitely gonna
that
have to bleep that. What I just said.
and so he can't really tell their gender and whatnot, but long story short, there's like a bunch of weird stuff that goes on. It's pretty fascinating. Obviously, he ends up seeing that there's always only 70 of them. They're all the same age. Long story short, he kind of climbs down this wall, finds like a temple thing inside of a cave, and sees that they worship these cruciforms. And so that's kind of why they save him, and they don't kill, like they kill the guide and they don't kill him because he's wearing a small cross, and finds out that this like organism that's like in the shape of a cross, they like essentially put on their sternum and it absorbs into them. And essentially, anytime they die, they're just like reincarnated, but they're like less of themselves, I guess. And that's why they're sexless now at this time, because I'm sure they've died countless times. And
Right.
so, and then he realizes that he can't, like, once he realizes, he's like, oh, I got to go tell people about this. He can't reach anyone because there's no like technology, whatever out there. So he goes to kind
Right.
of pass through this forest, can't make it because the cross thing like is makes it so
Like won't
painful
let
that he
him
passes
leave.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like when you have a dog on those like those electric fences or whatever. Is like what it reminded me of. But anyway, so he crucifies himself to a tree, which
The
like gives
Tesla
him like he
tree.
keeps dying over and over again, but because he has that little thing, he's still alive. Long story short, you figure out that Hoyt ends up going, finding him, and he kind of tells everybody, I think it's only the consul that knows it, right? That he
He has
actually has his own cross and he has
yeah. He has
jury.
two of them in
So
him. Yeah.
um
And so which
essentially
means, like, whenever Father Hoyt is, like, talked about in the book, like, in real time, he always looks, like, either super ill or, like, twacked
yeah,
out on drugs, and it's because he has those things in him, so he's constantly suffering that separation pain, so he's, like, doped up on Vicodin and Lord knows what else,
yeah.
so he's not in pain all the time.
So that's first chapter where you're like, okay, so a group of Down syndrome people
Yeah.
attack or
Which,
try
again,
and
is how
kill
he
him. And
describes them.
yes, and I mean they are kind of, I don't know. There's something. I mean, obviously they're less of who they used to be. I guess just because of this
Mhm.
constant rebirth, but I guess it's somehow intertwined with the Shrike, which you don't really know how. You just know
He just
he's
shows
their
up when they
god
go down there and
essentially.
do their ritual, he, like, shows up, but I think it infers that none of them can see him and that he only showed himself to, Durer or whatever his name is, but I can't remember
Yeah,
clearly. But yeah, that one was, there was I did for the first time I laughed a few times in this book, and the first time was a little over halfway through this first chapter, and this chapter, he's reading the notes. The character that's on the pilgrimage,
yeah,
Hoyt, is reading the notes, basically the diary of the guy who went to Hyperion and had this experience. So he does it in days. And on the day at the end of his day 103 entry, he gets done talking to one of the Bukhari or whatever they are that he's now been with for 100 days or whatever, or less than that. And after a conversation at the end of this day, he writes, we stared at each other for some time after that,
oh yeah,
each convinced, I am sure, that the other was a total idiot. And that made me
yeah.
laugh. Um,
That is funny.
Yeah, that was Father Hoyt's chapter, and it just really left you feeling like, man, I have no idea what is going on.
Because that's
Like,
nothing like what I was thinking for the sake of Hyperion and the Shrike, which again, at this point, you realize it's
yeah,
probably the guy on the front. So it's like, wait, what? An
yeah,
organism that's a cross that makes you immortal, but like also less of yourself? Like, what is this? And
yeah,
it's
and
somehow
it's
bound
he's
to the Shrike. Like, what?
yeah, and the guy who went and did this and Father Hoyt are Catholics, so there's like all this Catholicism and Christianity intertwined and prayer and all this stuff. And I finished this chapter and I'm thinking, is this like a sci-fi Christian book? Like, what is this? Like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Um,
It felt
so that
like
leads
the
us.
opposite to me. Like, where it's like a point
I
of
mean,
like,
yeah,
oh, Christianity's not real,
yeah. I mean,
essentially. But I
yeah.
don't know. Who knows? In book 2, it could, reverse card.
Jesus of Nazareth could show up in book 2. Who knows?
Yeah.
Um,
So,
so that
chapter
leads
2.
us into chapter 2, which is the soldier's tale from Fedman Kassad, and his time warping love affair, if you will.
This is
So
something special, man.
this guy's a soldier. He's a soldier boy. He does all kinds of stuff, and he takes liberties explaining to us all of his military career until, well, I guess this is throughout, but throughout he's explaining, like, it starts out in these simulations that he's doing for training, which is
Which is
crazy because the
wild what
first
he
one
starts
starts
off
out in the
with.
Battle of Agincourt. And Andrew and I, if you watch the video on our channel, we recently read a biography on Henry V, who is famously known for the Battle of Agincourt. So it starts out with him in this simulation in this battle. Um, and then he just like throughout these simulations starts like hooking up with this woman that he doesn't know. Um, and he's like not sure if she's real and he can't find her in real life. And all this stuff happens until eventually, like, I don't even remember how he gets there. Like crash lands on Hyperion or something. I think after like the ousters,
Yeah,
like
which we didn't even
he gets.
talk about that. I think that's like the whole point of why they're going there is because the ousters are supposed to like as far as the
Yeah, I
real
guess we
time
should say that. Like they're
storyline.
gonna be in, yeah,
Well,
in
that's
real
the thing.
time.
It's
They're
like
gonna
the
be
plot.
invaded.
So like what's going on? It's like
Yeah,
but
they're
yeah,
basically
the
trying to
ousters.
accomplish this pilgrimage before the invasion
And the
occurs.
ousters are, correct me if I'm wrong, at least in the beginning and whatnot, they're kind of characterized as the villains, right? Like the rebel
Yeah,
force
and
is coming
there
in.
it was very reminiscent to me of the later books of Dune after the scattering, which is post God Emperor of Dune. This idea that like different strands of humanity have like spread across the galaxy and now they're different in some ways. There's actually some of that in the book I read, the Warhammer book I read recently. But yeah, the Ousters are another branch of humanity that's like different and evolved differently.
Yeah.
And now they're wanting to attack the world of Hyperion. You don't know why, but they want to get this pilgrimage done before then. So yeah, we forgot to say that. So he has a battle with the Ousters, and then the story of him getting off that spaceship after it had been exploded, basically, and getting down to the planet was pretty intense. Like that was a good part of
Yeah.
this chapter. But he finds the girl on the planet Hyperion once he crashes there. Um, and then you just kind of find out that she's the Shrike. I'm pretty sure. I don't really know for sure, like, if
She's
that's
at
what
least an agent
happened.
of the Shrike. She may
Yeah,
be
at the
the
very
Shrike.
least, she's an agent, an agent.
She's an Asian.
She's an agent
She's
of the
an Asian
Shrike.
Shrike.
God dang it. So yeah, he has this love affair with this woman, and he's constantly searching for her, and then he finds her on, of course, Hyperion. Has this experience where he, like, the Shrike kind of lets him use his power, where it's basically like they're the Flash or something, and time slows down for them a ton. But it was cool how they explained it, like the abilities that the Shrike gave him were controlled by him blinking. So like he blinked once and everything stopped to like
Yeah.
super slow motion. Then he blinked again and it was like halftime, and then he blinked again and it was normal. So he kind of got it down, and they slaughtered these fools on Hyperion. Um, and then he's just like, yeah, so I'm coming back to Hyperion because I want to kill the Shrike.
Dude, it
That's his
reminded me
reason.
of the scene from the Warhammer video where that
Yeah,
whatever villain is kind of doing that with warping time. But anyway,
yeah, it was. Yeah, that's actually very reminiscent of it. So yeah, that's the soldier's tale. He got catfished by the Shrike, and now he wants to kill it. So he wants to go to Hyperion.
mhm.
On to chapter 3, the poet's tale. This has got to be the worst chapter in the books to
This is
tell us about it.
100% the worst. Yeah. I mean, this is the one where he really does some liberties, which obviously it's through a guy who's a poet, but it feels like he added this chapter just so he could kind of flex his literary ability and how
Yeah,
basically no one truly understands him because they're not smart enough is like what this chapter felt like to me. But Selenius, is that how you think it said? Martin
dude.
Selenius?
Just call this
Sure.
boy Martin.
Martin. So he's a once famous poet. He, I think, was raised on Earth. Somehow he's a lot older because he was like, I
He's on
mean,
that
long story
juice.
short, yeah, he's on the juice, but then he also got like frozen for a long time when he traveled to, because
He
essentially
also
his
got turned
parents were
into a
rich.
satyr at one point in his life,
That
which
was
is
a
crazy.
wild transition too,
That
but
was weird.
he anyway, there's so much that goes on in this chapter, and then also like really not much. I mean, he it was the least interesting. It was crazy, but it's somehow still not interesting. You know what I mean? Like so much happened when I really think about it, with like how he starts off, then he goes to like some whatever camp, like where he's just not a slave, but he's like paying off his debts that his mom or whoever had, and then he writes some story, someone finds it, he becomes a billionaire overnight, has a house with portals that go to different worlds, abuses all that, and then ends up going to Hyperion. That's where you kind of do get a lot
Well,
of
he loses his
insight to King.
muse. Like that's his whole thing is he's lost his muse, and that's what was particularly annoying about this chapter. Is his whole thing throughout his flashback is that he's trying to find his muse so he can have good
Yeah,
writings again. And it's like, dude, it feels like a short story about a poet with writer's block and the problems with publication of literature. And it's like, bro, I thought I was reading a sci-fi novel. Like, why am I learning about,
yeah. Especially because it's the
publication
back and
troubles?
forth of him trying to make money, and really it's all like it was kind of a shot in the dark that why he got famous, and it was just like a flash pan thing, and he's wanting to go back and do all this stuff, but no one cares about it. Which, I mean, there was a slight interesting part of like to think about if technology goes so far that no one will ever actually read, because you'll just like kind of have information plugs like with just dumps of information, and that would be kind of wild. But anyway, you do get a lot of background though, and insight into like King Billy, and which was weird at the same time, but like more insight on Hyperion, because I mean he lives there like very close. Like when he moves to Hyperion, and then he ends up living outside the time tombs in that like the world city of poets or whatever it's called. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean basically he can only write when the strike is like killing people, and it seems to be that like once he starts writing about the strike, that's when he starts doing his thing as well, maybe.
Yeah, it almost seems
But
like he summoned the strike by writing
somehow by talking about
about
him,
him.
yeah.
Yeah.
And anyway, so his whole goal is he hasn't finished this poem and he wants to finish it. And so, which I mean, the way that story ends too, with how like Billy gets savaged by the strike, and
Yeah.
Billy's trying to like burn the pieces of
Yeah.
um literature, I guess, that Martin wrote about the strike, and he can't do it. I mean, it's crazy how this chapter wasn't good with all the things that he did when I truly think about it, but it's still just I just didn't care, even though so much
Yeah.
happened. But anyway, he's
Yeah.
trying to go back and finish it, I
Just
guess.
to finish his
But
poem. I mean, this guy sucks, honestly. He's the most annoying character. His story was the least
he is.
enjoyable. And after reading that chapter, I was really like, man, I got to finish this book so I can read something else. And then it all changed in
Yeah.
chapter 4.
Thank God you get chapter
This
4, yeah.
I mean, dude, this is I think you agree this is the best chapter in the
Yeah, this is
book.
the best
This
chapter for sure.
is the scholar's tale about Sol Weintraub and his time reversed daughter.
This could be a
So,
story on its own, like I think.
oh
You know
yeah.
what I
Oh
mean?
yeah. Just I mean this story was just so heartbreaking. So essentially the character telling this tale, his name's Saul. He's a Jewish scholar and a historian. He's a teacher. His life is very different than a lot of the other characters' lives in that, he lives on like a regular world. Like they don't care about going to different planets and doing a bunch of space shit. Like he's just trying to teach at
Yeah.
school, take care of his family. He's just a down to earth, good old boy that's, I mean, doing the Lord's work, teaching the youth of the galaxy about
Yeah.
history. Um, and so his daughter Rachel ends up, getting into more advanced stuff, and she's super smart. And so she starts traveling off world, and of course ends up at Hyperion. And actually at the time tombs. And she essentially goes down there one day and very obviously has an experience with the Shrike, even though that's not like explicitly stated. It's clear that the Shrike pulls up on her while she's at the
Yeah.
time tombs. And then from there, she gets Benjamin buttoned in a way. She starts
She does.
reversing. Like she's, I think,
And before
maybe in
this,
her,
Soul has a child with him, a small child with him, and you're like, "Who is this small child?"
yeah, you meet Soul in the beginning of the book and he's carrying a baby with him. And it makes it clear that he's like probably a 50 or 60-year-old man, which you find out he's actually much older than that, but he looks like he's 50 or 60 years old. And you're like, this dude's got a young kid. Like he's out here pimping. But you find out that it's his used to be 30 or late 20-year-old daughter who is now reverted to like a 3-month-old baby. And es- uh, obviously, for obvious reasons, this is a heartbreaking chapter, but it is so good because his daughter comes back eventually after this experience happens, starts aging in reverse. And while she's aging in reverse, every day she wakes up, whatever age she wakes up at reversed, like that's where her memories are. So she
Yeah,
starts
that's tough.
forgetting everything that happened up to that age that she's reverted back to. So if she starts at 25, by the time she gets to 24, she thinks she's 24 and thinks she's moving forward in the future. So every single day at the beginning, she starts watching videos. It reminded me of what's the movie 50 First Dates where that girl with Adam
Oh
Sandler?
yeah,
It
yeah.
reminded me of that because she wakes up every morning and has to watch a video of herself explaining what all has happened, and she has like
It
this love
reminds me
of
of
her life
Memento.
boyfriend. Yeah, it's got a Memento vibe for sure. Good shout out. That's much better than what I said. Uh but dude, she's like in love with this dude and then eventually she forgets him and just the way Dan Simmons, like, explains it, like, it just feels so heartbreaking
Oh,
because
yeah,
all the
it's rough.
characters around her, like, are doing everything they can. Her boyfriend ends up going back to Hyperion, and basically, it seems like spends the rest of his life that we see, which is another 20, 30 years, 20 years, trying to figure out what happened so he can cure her so she can start, aging again. Because as she gets younger, they start worrying, like, I mean, is she just going to disappear once she fully reverses? Like, surely she can't go negative. So she's just going to end up disappearing or dying or whatever. So they're trying to figure it out. But man, it's just so sad. Like, she'll wake up one day and be like, yo, I want to go play with, Katie today. And meanwhile, her dad's like, yo, Katie's 45 years old and has 2 kids and doesn't live on this planet anymore. But she thinks that Katie's still her age and her best friend at school.
Yeah,
So he has to go through all this like smoke and mirror game of trying to make her feel like things are normal. And eventually the press gets to him and finds out and they have to move off planet. So it's just this constant thing, man. And like, the mom is involved in this as well. I forget her name now, but like it's just heartbreaking seeing them deal with it, but how they soldier on and do whatever they can to make their daughter happy. And then after essentially 20 years of doing that, of having both your life and your child's life taken from you in this tragedy, Soul tells his wife, like, you need to go take a break. Go visit your sister on this other world. Like, we've been doing this 20 years straight. I'll take care of her for a few days. Just take you a break. Rest, baby girl. I love you. She flies off and dies in a space crash, which in this
mm,
book, dude, how advanced things are in space, it's like, dude, how are you having space crashes? Like, y'all
yeah.
can teleport. How are you
But then
crashing in
also
space?
the main thing too that we don't have in our notes, but that we should. He's been having dreams to
Oh,
say
yeah.
to take her to Hyperion, and then basically the wife does too. And he doesn't.
Yeah. That's so important. And yeah, we don't have it in our notes, but yeah, he starts having a vision once this occurs, and it's essentially from the Bible when God
Yeah,
comes to Abraham and tells him to take his son Isaac up onto the mountain peak and sacrifice him to God. And in the Bible, he wrestles with the fact because he's a historian, he knows that story very well. He wrestles with the fact that yes, God ends up not, he stays Abraham's hand and doesn't make him sacrifice his son, but Abraham was ready to do it and, like,
yeah.
I'm not actually ready to do that for, like, because he doesn't believe in God. Um, at least at the start of the story, maybe that develops a bit. I can't quite remember who that was, but either way,
The fact that his
he's
wife was
coming.
having the same dream though and didn't tell him, it's
Yeah,
like he felt for him too, because she was like trying to protect him. I mean, every part about this
yeah.
story is sad, dude.
It's just so sad. It's just such a good, like, tragic, grief-stricken story that I mean, it was Dude, I got so locked into this chapter. I forgot we were on Hyperion in real time. Like, I forgot about everything, and I was just
Yeah.
locked into this father's story of trying to heal his daughter before she disappears into nothingness. And it's just, I mean, it's a long, most of these chapters are like 75 to 100 pages. So a lot of that is just her slowly reverting in time and all the little intricacies that come with that. And every
Mhm.
one of them is heartbreaking. At one point, when she's like 11, 13 years old, the boyfriend who hasn't seen her in like a decade comes to see Saul to basically tell him like, "Dude, we've been trying, like people have died. We haven't figured out anything." And he sees her and it's just so sad because you're seeing it from Saul's perspective and he's like, "Bro, this guy's trying his hardest to keep it together, but he's like falling apart now that he's seen her." Like,
Yeah.
and it's just, again, the way that he describes it and his prose in this chapter just really shined for me. And this
I
brought me
agree.
right back in. It brought me right back into this book. So the reason Soul is there is because he's trying to heal his daughter. And he's had this dream where he might have to sacrifice himself, but you get the idea that, or he would have to sacrifice his daughter, but you get the idea that his plan is to sacrifice himself so that she can have her life back.
Yeah. Which she's
So that's
close.
his goal.
I'm pretty sure at this point,
Yeah, she's
like
like 3 months
being
old.
well, I think
Yeah.
she's less than that. I think she's like
Yeah, I think
weeks.
you're right, actually. Yeah,
She's
you're
like
right.
very close. Like they're cutting it to where it's like, all
Y
right, we don't have much time left.
yeah,
But
and
but
there's
then
another
the
touching
console
moment
even
was
says, "Oh, you keep going."
well, that's what I was gonna say is there's a touching moment when this ends where it might be at the no, it's at the end of the book. There's a touching
Yeah, it's
moment
towards
at
the
the
end of
end
the
of the
book.
book, after the final tale where they all hug each other, which out of context, I would've been like, "That's gay." But it was actually really a touching moment for the context of the story, and while they're hugging, the Consul says, because you find out he doesn't have a wish, necessarily, he's just along for the ride, which we'll talk about at the end, but, he says, "I changed my mind, I do have a wish, and it's for her." And so it's just very touching, man, it clearly touches all the characters, and it's, to me, definitely the part that will stick with me the most from this book, because
I
it was
agree.
just so well written, like, it was just so good, man, dude, a tragic mother and father story doing everything they can for their child, just it's gonna hit every time,
Yeah,
um,
shout out good
so
parenting,
yeah,
man.
shout out to them. We love them. Where would we be without them? So that's the fourth tale from the scholar. That leads us on to the detective's tale. Andrew, tell us about
Yeah,
Miss Braun Lamia.
this one felt video game esque. I don't know. It felt more like cyberpunk or something. Like it had a completely
Yeah,
different vibe.
dude,
But
did it feel low key murder bot to you?
I kind of yeah. I mean, I didn't think about it until now, but yeah.
Sorry,
I
keep
mean,
going.
it's just wild how each one kind of feels like a complete. I mean, there's so many different worlds, but they are so they are literally different worlds. But anyway, this one I think gives us more context to what's going on, like in the galaxy. I would say
Yes,
because you
definitely.
get
Yeah,
like the Techno Core, which is this AI faction. That's well, to before we even get to the Techno Core, um, man, I wish we had it. What is it like the all thing? Like in our notes, we don't have that. But anyway, just the different structures of kind of what's going on. But anyway, Lamia
yeah.
is a private investigator. She gets hired by this AI who, well, I guess it's not an AI. He's
It's his
a
cybrid, which is
his
basically
hybrid,
his
his
quasi human
avatar.
form.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of that the AI can reside in. And she wants him or he wants her to investigate his own murder, and essentially because he's lost memories. So they go on this wild like goose chase. She ends up kind of falling in love with him, and you kind of end up figuring out that it kind of a tie into the poet chapter that he was this secret like AI, not I don't know if it's secret, but it's this AI project by the Technocore to try and I guess create human life in a way of like implementing AI into previous people's like using previous famous people's like memories or works or whatever to create a persona and then have it form inside of an AI. And
To the
so
point where
he
they
is
create an entire old Earth. And
small
that's
Earth,
where they
yeah,
put these AIs, like, they try to put
yeah,
them in their environment that the original person was in, and they give them it's cool how he explains it, like, they don't
it is,
have the exact, like, all the memories, but they take all that they do know about that person, and the context of it and try to make as close as they can to that person. And it's John Keats is the poet that
John Keats, yeah.
he was made after, essentially.
And in the end, you figure out that, I mean, there's a city called Keats on Hyperion, which I think is kind of tied in with the whole poet's like city and the Shrike somehow. But essentially, he now finds out that he was trying to implement, like he was essentially trying to go off grid and place all of his identity into his cybrid, which I guess is a big no no. But yet somehow the Shrike Church was like kind of okay for it. And long story short, I mean, it was kind of a fascinating ride because it was so different than the other, especially like the previous chapter, because it's more violent with like, a big brawl, like with fighting and stuff. At the very end, when they're trying to get to the church to try and get off world to even go to Hyperion, where Johnny dies, but he like somehow puts his entire existence into like a thing inside of Lamia. So she kind of has like a hard drive essentially of him. I think if
In her
that's how,
head. Yeah.
yeah,
In layman's
um,
terms. But
yeah,
the
and
other
so
thing that we don't have in our notes is the reason he finds out the reason he lost his memory is because the techno core does not want him going to Hyperion. So
yeah.
they took the part of the memory where he realized that there's a place called Keats on Hyperion, that there might be something special there if he goes there, like all that kind of stuff. And we don't really find out why. We just find out that the techno core and all these AI people things don't like they're scared of Hyperion. It's a
I think it's the time tombs,
undetermined
right?
variable to them. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the time tomb specifically that they just
because
it
they can
throws
predict.
off their prediction. Yeah, they have a 98.5% like
Yeah,
accurate prediction of the future, but because of the time tombs, they don't really like that's an unknown variable to them. So that freaks them out.
I
So they
will
don't want
say
Johnny doing that.
there were parts of this that were interesting because it is the most sci-fi it gets. Because to kind of build off what you're saying, where it's, I mean, essentially AI goes off on its own and it has its own thing that it
It's
does.
like own
Its own like
society.
society
Yeah.
where they're doing AI stuff and the humans don't really know what they're doing, but they realize it doesn't
AI
matter
type
because if
shit.
yeah, if they need us, like if they were going to kill us, they would have already done it. But they kind of realize the AI actually do need us for whatever reasons
Right.
because they're not human, and so they just do their own
Yeah.
thing, and then they kind of have a shared deal. And for a while, it seems like the ousters like were the people that kind of were out and against AI, but then you kind of learn like, oh, dude, they do still have some interaction with the AI
Right.
stuff. But I guess that's why Hyperion's such a big deal too, because it's like off grid is like how I'm, I guess, seeing it, which I know
Yeah.
the time team has to deal with that. Um, so it's kind
Yeah.
of it's especially people who've been living off of Hyperion. It's like, oh wait, you come there and you can't do a lot of things like call your ship or do a log thing. Like the people are kind of the people that are going to see, what's the word? I mean words, dude. The seven
I mean,
people.
what are they?
What are
The
they?
pilgrims.
The pilgrims, they like keep talking about the different issues they're having because they're on, why can't we just fly a ship there or whatever, because they're
Right.
slowly progressing there and it's because of them not being kind of connected. So I will say
Yeah.
this one, I did not like this one. This one I thought was
Yeah.
solid. It wasn't like insanely amazing, but it was like an
Yeah.
interesting, fast pace, like you're saying, kind of murder by. I mean, definitely science fiction. This is the most science fiction
Yeah.
it gets to
Super
me.
high sci-fi type stuff. And it was
Um,
the third best chapter to me. And another
yeah,
cool thing
I like
about
that
it
one.
that we also don't have in our notes was so when Lamia is when she's talking to Johnny and trying to understand everything, this is after he takes her to old Earth, or maybe it's right before. He's explaining that to her. He's explaining Old Earth, and she says she's trying to figure out why they would make that. Like, why would the AI Technocore Society take all this time to make an Old Earth and make AI cybrids with memories of ancient people? Like, why? And her quote is, "Why, for God's sake?" And Johnny responds, "That may very well be the reason." And she doesn't pick up on it. But then later in the story, she says, "Earlier you said, I said, why for God's sake? And you said that may be the reason. What did you mean by that?" And he said, "That may be the reason they're doing it, for the sake of God." And she was like, "What do you mean?" And he said, "They are trying." It was cool the way he explained it. It almost felt like either they're trying to recreate God or they're trying to re-invite God back into the picture almost, or they're trying
Yeah.
to understand what the concept of God really is and if God's real. So it was just this really, I thought that was a really cool concept that you have an entire AI society that can predict 98% of the future, and they're like trying to rediscover God almost is what it seems like. Which maybe
Yeah.
that's not what they're doing. That might just be Johnny's perspective, but I thought that was a really cool detail that he said that might be why they're doing it is because we're trying to get God
Yeah.
back in our life. We're trying to get right
I
with the
agree.
Lord is what is what the AI techno core is doing. Um, and so yeah, so Johnny ends up getting killed, and so her whole thing is she's trying to like figure out what's going on. Like, why are
Yeah.
the techno core scared of the strike? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, and that's like a whole hidden war thing. So, anyway.
Yeah. So that is the fifth tale from the detective. That leads us on to the final tale in the book. And before we get to this, the seventh pilgrim is the Templar, Het Mastine.
I mean, I still
And
have no idea what they got going on, bro. I don't.
I mean,
I
I
was
don't know
trying.
what,
It was a tree spaceship. Like there was so much creativity going on that it
yeah.
just evaded me. I'm like, I don't
Dude, I
really know what
looked
to
up,
picture.
yeah, bro, and I looked up fan art of it and I was like, that wasn't what I was picturing. So, I mean, what I was picturing was wrong if that picture
I
is
was
right. And
picturing
I'll
a
send it
literal
to you.
tree flying through space, dude.
I mean, it basically is, but it's like a big, huge tree surrounded by a globe, and then there's like other stuff kind of off of it. And all I'm thinking is like, bro, how does this thing get through space without falling apart? But whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't make the world. Anyway, so we don't get all seven stories because like halfway through the journey, he ends up disappearing and there's blood all over his room. Um, and we never find out what happens to him. They think they
No
see him from a
closure.
distance
No
at the end of the
closure
book,
with that one,
but we
dude.
have no idea what happened to him. His ship gets
Free
destroyed.
Dan.
There was a cool note though. The consul said he knew something was wrong. They see from the ground up in space the tree ship get destroyed, which belongs to the Templar. And the consul explains that the Templars are so like intimately
Connected.
connected to their ships
Yeah.
that like it usually like there's a whole crash out for the person if their ship gets destroyed. But when his ship got destroyed, he just like throws his hood up and walks off. And the consul said, I knew something was wrong then. Either he knew about it beforehand and disconnected himself, or that wasn't the person we thought it was. So I thought that was interesting, but it goes nowhere in this book. So we only get
Yeah.
6 of the 7 stories. That leads us to the final one, and that is the character we started with at the very beginning of the book, the consul. Um, and this was the second best story to me. I was like so deep in this one. It was very cool.
Yeah.
So the console story really isn't his, but you don't know that until the end. But he basically plays a recording that someone else left, and it's actually the story of the consul's grandfather. So his and this was a really cool concept of uh looking at like the time travel
Yeah.
aspects of a story. So
It reminds me of Interstellar
yeah,
when
it's
they go
got
down on
yeah,
that planet, dude, and they come back and it's been like 14 years, and you're like, oh my
yeah.
god.
So it's got that aspect to it. When people travel through space in this world, they call it a time debt, and it's essentially they're just losing time. Like you can for you it could be a 4-month trip, but you get home and it's been 8 years for everybody. So the consul's grandfather was just a working man for the hegemony, which is like the society of man in this story. And he is trying to build, or he's part of a crew that is building a Farcaster, which is a portal. It's a Rick and Morty portal, essentially,
It is, yeah.
on this planet called Maui Covenant. So he goes on a visit. He starts working, and on one of the times that he's working there, they go to a local party, and the people on this planet are really primitive compared to the rest of the galaxy. He goes, meets a girl, they lie with one another,
They
and he
lie.
ends up getting her pregnant. But every time he comes down to work again, it's been like 15 years. So they
Yeah.
have 6 visits, he and this girl that he initially hooked up with. Um, and every time he comes, like, it's only been months for him. So he's like 21 years old throughout this entire story. She ends up being in her 60s or 70s the last time they see each other. He has children and grandchildren that are older than him, or maybe the grandchild isn't. No, the grandchild definitely isn't. But so it's this really cool story attacking like the time concept. And
It literally
there's this
reminds me of
really
that Rick and Morty episode where I don't know if you remember this, and this may derail us, but there's an episode where Morty is trying to impress. Jessica, I think is maybe the girl's name, and
Oh
he like
yeah,
goes to get wine, and
yeah.
Rick gives him this portal that like is the time goes by
Takes him
way
to this
faster.
world.
So he throws wine in this thing, and then comes back, and then it's like every time they're just trying to kill him, like and they've
Yeah,
like
dude,
aged
that
like
that Rick and Morty
thousands of
episode is
years.
so funny.
Oh
Yeah,
man,
it is like that. So yeah, there's a few things. This book is honestly a rip off Rick and Morty. But no, so he falls in love with this girl, and it's cool how it approaches the story because she goes through her entire life, and he's just 21 years old. Like it's just been a
yeah,
few
he's so
months for him
young.
every time, or he's
Yeah,
been asleep the whole time. So he hasn't matured like emotionally or anything like that. And she's, in all these different stages of life whenever he sees her. So it's really cool how he approaches that. One part of this chapter that, like, dude, it gave me the heebie jeebies is when they go swimming. And then, so on this planet, the islands move and are like alive basically. And they have these huge tendrils that hang off the bottom of them. And he goes swimming with his girl, and they're like in deep, dark water, and they swim like way down into the water. They have these like masks on. They go super deep where it's almost like impossible to see. And the way he describes these tendrils hanging
yeah,
everywhere around them and floating and going so deep into the black darkness of the water, bro, it scared me. It made me feel uncomfy. I was like, bro,
yeah.
no girl would have got me in that water, bro. You want me to swim around next to a living island? You've lost your mind. Um, but it's a pretty cool story. They have Aladdin's carpets on this planet,
That was a
which
weird.
was out of nowhere. Like, is
Well,
that
they
where
did.
Aladdin's
They
carpet
did.
came from?
They did reference that one other time before. I want to
Yeah, they
say
did.
in the previous
You're right.
chapter, but it was still like. I mean, I
You're
guess it
right.
made sense why they were outlawed because of they couldn't track them, and
You're right.
they could hit
Lamia
others.
rides one
Yeah,
when she's on the run,
but
kinda.
still, it is
Yeah.
a wild thing to just throw in there.
Yeah, you just throw in Aladdin's carpet into the middle of this story. So, essentially what happens, though, is she ends up dying, and the hegemony of man, this, big advanced galactic society, has come onto this primitive planet and started building stuff and tearing things down, and a lot of the islands have died off. So throughout this story, and after he gets done with the recording, you find out that the consul, this character of the pilgrimage, who's kind of the main character throughout the book, is the grandson of that young man who impregnated the woman and yada yada yada. So like the consul is 9 years old when his 21-year-old grandfather makes his last visit to the planet, or at least last visit for the sake of her. But she's dead by this point, so he goes to her grave, and then the grandfather who was telling that original story ends up exploding the Farcaster right when it gets put in place, to try to slow down the hegemony of man getting in on this planet, and it results in this whole war. So the consul's whole, you find out that the consul is indeed the spy.
Yeah,
And you find out his backstory after he tells his grandfather's story, and essentially he had risen up through the ranks of politics or whatever, and had eventually, throughout all these kind of different things, been given the job of going out to contact the ousters. Um, and it's kind of a convoluted thing, but the people who sent them there from the Society of the Imperium of Man, or whatever the heck, the hegemony, knew that the ousters wanted Hyperion. They weren't really sure why, but they knew they wanted to come there. And they wanted that to happen. They wanted to use him to try to convince them to go to Hyperion, and it's essentially them trying to start a war so that,
yeah,
one, they can take Hyperion, in the name of like galactic security, and two, they can be rid of the ousters once and for all. So it's this whole plan that looks like it's going to backfire because the consul becomes like a double, triple agent, tells the ousters everything that he knows, and basically puts this long plan in place and waits until this moment.
bro. And he
Well, actually,
clicks
he does it
start.
during the story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
bro. He
so
clicks start
basically,
on it.
it's actually crazy how that happens. So to back up a little bit, the ousters have a device that very slowly will open the time tombs. And once you click it on, there's no going back. And their society of the ousters is debating within their government or whatever in their society whether or not to actually use this, because to kind of boil all the story down, the main theory that the ousters have, and that some people in the hegemony of man have, is that the time tombs were sent from the future, and they're going back in time, and that the purpose of them is to release the Shrike upon the galaxy. And what they don't know, that's like the prevailing theory, but what they don't know is, did mankind send this back to correct their mistakes, or did the Technocore send this back to just wipe out mankind? Like, we don't really know why. So the Ouster Society is debating, like, is this really a good idea? Should we open the time tombs? We don't really know if this is going to be good for us or not, but
Yeah.
they do. You start to realize that the hegemony of man that all these characters live under, that you've been getting to know, is, of course, a really corrupt, oppressive society. Their basically main thing that they do that, reveals them as being very corrupt and evil, is anytime the hegemony of man comes across a species that could potentially rival them intellectually or technologically or anything like that, they just wipe them out. So they're obviously bad. The Ousters know this. The Consul believes this. So he's trying to help the Ousters start this war and hopefully destroy the hegemony of man. And so they come to Hyperion together, and this is still flashback. The Consul and some of the Ousters go to the planet to kind of scout things out. And these idiots from the Ouster camp knew that they weren't going to use the device that day, and for whatever reason brought it down to the surface of Hyperion. And so once the Consul realizes, like, oh, y'all aren't for sure going to do this, pew pew pew, kills every one of them and turns the bitch on, like, immediately, like, no questions
Yeah.
asked. Once he finds out that they're debating on whether or not to do it, he's like, oh no, we're doing it. Like, I'm getting my get back. My grandma died because of these people. So he turns the thing on, and then you find out that, like, right at the very end of the book, it's finally time for the time tombs to open after this thing has been turned on for all these years. And the Consul's basically just like, so yeah, like, I opened them. I don't really care what happens. We're probably all going to die. I'm just here to see it through. Like, I have to just send a message to them once it's open. And they're like, it's kind of funny how all the characters, like, you think when he's done telling the story, like, okay, they're going to kill him now because he's a traitor or whatever. But, and it makes sense because you know all their stories and they're all tragedies essentially in one way or another. They're all just like, no, that sounds good. Yeah, let's destroy our society. Let's go. And then they all hold hands and start walking towards the time tombs, and the book is over. It's like, okay. And that's it, dude. Islet Book Reviews. We'll see you next time.
I mean, dude, it is a wild ending, man. I mean, especially
Yeah.
given the context of, we read the first law and there's some like wild endings that they have, but I mean, it's not even close, man. There's literally no closure to me. I mean, none.
No, there's none. This book, there's no closure, dude, because there's barely any opener.
Yeah.
Like, again, in real time, all that happens is, like, you start this book thinking they are going on a pilgrimage so all of them can get to the time tombs. They're going to talk to the Shrike somehow, and one of them's going to get to make a wish, and then they're probably all going to die. They don't do that. That
Yeah.
doesn't happen. They start to walk towards that when the book ends. So it really is a prologue. It feels like a prologue for the rest of this story, which, that being, our favorite series of all time, Red Rising, the first book is a prologue to the rest of the series. Not at all
Yeah.
comparable. I'm not saying it's the same type of
Yeah.
thing, but it could be that when you start reading the rest of these books, you're like, oh, dude, I'm so glad we got all of Martin's story.
I'm so
What are your
glad
odds?
that poem needed to be finished, dude. That poem, it's
So,
like will change the course of history.
yeah, so just for fun, real quick, since it's so broken up and there's only 6 chapters, I would say the best story we agree is The Scholar's Tale. I think The Consul's Tale is the second best. Would you agree?
Yes. Yeah, it's
And
close between that one and the Laurie. What is her name?
Lamia? Yeah, so I
Lamia.
think her story is the third best. So, of the bottom 3, you have the poet, the soldier, and the priest. I would give the soldier the 4 spot.
I think I give the priest the 4 spot, but I mean, I think we're just
Okay.
cutting hairs here. I'm
I
going
mean, yeah, we're
4, or I mean, obviously the last one's poet. So,
the last one's the poet, so it's a toss up who 4
dude,
and 5
the
are.
end. I'm sorry, and this is slightly graphic, and I'll even tailor it just so I don't even have to edit this far into the video. But bro, when they're having sex at the end for Kassad's chapter, and she like turns into like a robot strike thing, I was like, bro, that was too
Oh, dude,
much.
I forgot about that. I'd repress that, dude.
Yeah, so I
Yeah, I
mean,
don't need
that
that in my life.
alone puts
I read
it to
that scene and
love.
I was like, does he still have a member after that experience?
I don't know, man. And it was just like the liberties. The fact that I'm even having to think about that. just was. I mean, he went there. So, but
He
yeah,
did.
I
I mean,
mean,
Simmons does go there. If we well, don't say anything else, the dude went there. He was
he
not
went
afraid to
there,
go there.
sure. But
Um. So yeah, I mean, I think again, the latter half of the book was really good to me, dude. If the whole book had been like those last 3 chapters, I mean, God knows, bro. I might have given this 5 stars. Like, maybe. Um.
I mean, this
So yeah, that's.
says. I mean, you still don't get anything. So to start the fall of Hyperion, the thing on
Oh, I know,
Goodreads
bro.
says
That synopsis
in
is
the
not giving you
stunning
anything.
continuation of the epic adventure begun in Hyperion, Simmons returns us to a far future resplendent with is
Resplendent,
that
yes.
interesting? I don't think I've ever used that word in my life. With drama and invention on the world of Hyperion, the mysterious time tombs are opening. Oh, thanks, Dan. And the secrets they contain mean that nothing anywhere okay, nice. Nothing in the universe will ever be the same.
Yeah, which is so
That's
funny,
it.
dude. If you just read the first chapter, the prologue, and the first part of chapter 1 of this book before you even start getting into people's tales, if you just read, I guess maybe the first 30 to 40 pages of Hyperion, and then you went and read that synopsis for the second book of the series, you would be flabbergasted because you are fully expectant when you start Hyperion that the time tombs are going to be open and I'm going to see what happens when they open in this book. No, you're
Have you,
not. You know
dude? The
nothing about the time tombs at the end of this book, and it's kind
and
of frustrating.
your cover right is the one of
Oh
Soul
yeah, dude.
and
Abraham's
Rachel.
taking Isaac to the Shrike is what it looks like to me. That's what it
The
looks like
strike
to
looks
me.
crazy, dude. I mean, it's just one of those things.
He does, but I noticed in none of the art, he doesn't have 4 arms in the art, or it doesn't look like it, and he's supposed to have 4 arms the way he's described
Bro,
in the
this
book.
is
I actually
accurate.
saw people talking about it on Reddit, and they were like, "Yeah, like the artist didn't like have the material of the book before they were just given a vague idea and made this." And that's kind of crazy to think about. It's like, I mean, it's pretty good, like based on the description of the Shrike. Like, yeah, like if he had 2 more arms, like that's what I figured. So it's like, how did they, I feel like Dan Simmons was just like, yo, it's Sauron, but with like more sharp edges. Just make Sauron with like a bunch of
Just
spikes
make
all
him
over
with
him.
a ton of spikes.
Yeah. It's like do Sauron, but do like the Steppenwolf version from the Snyder cut where he's just got a bunch of sharp mirrors all over his body. That was a deep cut
Yeah, I didn't
for
understand that at all, but I trust you.
yeah. And that's really gonna stir up the fandom of
Mhm.
DC because Snyder's so polarizing. But anyway, Hyperion, the first book in the Hyperion Cantos by Dan Simmons. What else is there to say? I mean, we're reading the next book at some point, hopefully this year, maybe. I bought
Maybe.
the rest of the series because I
Yeah.
am an addict. So here we go right here. Got books 2, 3, and 4. They will happen eventually. Let us know if you've read The Fall of Hyperion or if you've read the whole series without spoilers. Let us know what you think of it. But yeah, not what we expected. By no means the worst book we've ever read. A
No.
different experience compared to a lot of stuff I've read. Some high moments, some low moments, some really sad moments. A couple times I laughed. What more do you want, honestly? You want more
Yeah.
chapters. What you want is more chapters in a book that's 500 pages, but you know, life gives you lemons. Do with that what
Yeah.
you will.
I agree. I mean, this will not be in my top 10 no matter what happens in the next book, but
I mean,
I'm confident to say that.
no.
Even though, I mean, I bet I would have said that too with Red Rising. But
That's a good
dude,
point,
just
dude.
the plot of Red Rising though still is so different than like what you're promised you are kind of delivered on, whereas what I was promised in prologue I was not delivered on, in my opinion. So
No, and that's a big thing. Like Sanderson talks about that in a lot of his writing
yeah,
classes.
he
Like he
does.
says, you make a promise and you have to deliver on it. And that doesn't feel like it's done in this book, but
He just shouldn't have had a prologue. Just don't have
yeah,
one. And then I'm like, okay, you know,
yeah. Or at least just make the book 600 pages long, 7 chapters, and tell us what happens when the time tombs open. Like, do what you said you were gonna do. And that's one of the main reasons this is a 4-star book for me, because even though I did enjoy it, it was pretty disappointing to know that I'm gonna have to
Well,
read another 500-page
because it
book, and
feels
at
like
the
a
end of that
standalone.
one, the time
This
tombs are
feels like a
probably gonna open.
standalone book, but you don't know what happens at the end. So that's the
Yeah,
weirdest part about it. Like the plot is like a standalone plot, you
yeah.
know, and
Yeah,
or
and there's
like the
certainly, like I feel like books like, this isn't a super old book, but I think it was when it late '80s when it came
89 or
out,
something. Yeah,
'89. But I know especially, like, the more you go back, books feel so theme heavy, and this book obviously has heavy themes on, you know, technological advancements, like, industry and how it affects the planet, all this kinda stuff. So,
yeah,
there's obviously heavy themes in here, but some of it's missed by the liberties he's taken and the fact that each chapter is like 90 pages long. Another interesting thing, though, you find out that what happened to Earth was that either the Technocore or some other party put a little black hole in the center of the planet that over time like metastasized into the planet being destroyed. And they just threw that in there really quickly. I was like, they put a black hole in the core of the planet.
how do you
Okay,
do that?
what's that?
Yeah,
What do you mean? How big was the needle? Like, I don't understand.
yeah,
But that's sci-fi for you. So, I think that's it for Hyperion. Yeah.
yeah. I think so too.
Let us know your thoughts or don't. Hit the thumbs down button and we'll see you on the next one.
See you guys.